Did you know that in Canada, how easy or difficult it is to get bail depends in part on what color your skin is and what your racial background is? Today on Don't Talk TV, we'll have a look at those portions of the criminal code that do this. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. Recently, there was a case that made a lot of news headlines, and we'll take a look at one of those news articles about a young man named Randall McKenzie, who allegedly murdered a police officer. That case raised some questions about how did this young man get bail, because he was out on bail for some very serious charges. And how did that happen? Came up in the news, and the police expressed great outrage. So let's take a look at that case, and then we'll look at Canada's bail law to help explain why this man was out on the streets and how this was able to happen. This case has been reported in a number of places. I've just at random chosen this Toronto Sun article entitled, "Ontario Cops Concerned It's Become, quote, open season on police officers," unquote. Little bit hyperbolic. I mean, I think there's not still very few police fatalities. I think there's a lot of jobs that still have a lot more fatalities than police. But in any event, they're upset that in the wake of yet another cop killing, the Ontario Provincial Police Association vows to turn outrage into action and push lawmakers for changes. So, here they're saying that cops across the province are outraged at the rise in lawlessness that has seen officers targeted while responding to even the most routine of calls. And this is in the context of having the recent funeral of OPP Constable Grzegorz Greg Pieczała, sixth officer killed in the line of duty in just over 2 years, 5 of them shot to death. So here's the key part here. Pieczała, 28, was responding to a vehicle in a ditch near Hagersville on December 27th when he was gunned down, allegedly by one of the occupants, Randall McKenzie, 25, who was out on bail at the time for allegedly assaulting a cop and possessing a handgun. And the OPP union says, if we don't do something about this and push the lawmakers for changes, we're going to be dealing with this again and again. Now, to my great amazement, the Globe and Mail ran this article saying accused OPP shooter was out on bail due to Indigenous identity. It says, a man who is accused of killing an Ontario provincial police officer while out on bail for previous alleged violent offenses had been set free from jail primarily because he is Indigenous, a transcript of his bail review hearing shows. It says here that even the judge at Mr. McKenzie's June bail hearing, Ontario Superior Court Justice Harrison Errol, acknowledged that his release was iffy and that the prosecution was justifiably concerned he would reoffend, according to the transcript which was obtained by the Globe and Mail. But Justice Errol concluded that Mr. McKenzie's Indigenous background hung heavily in the balance, saying, quote, the accused is Indigenous, and it is a well-known fact that such individuals are overrepresented in our prison system, especially in pretrial custody, because of their challenges with poverty, lack of education, and addiction issues, he said. All of these factors are present in this case. So now let's look at the sections of the criminal code that led to this situation and what Justice Errol was referencing when he, later in the decision, ultimately said he felt that he had to release Mr. McKenzie because he was Indigenous. So if we look under Part 16 of the criminal code, that is the section entitled Compelling Appearance of Accused Before a Justice and Interim Release. So interim release, that's bail. Right at the beginning, we have principle and considerations. So Section 493.1 lays out the principle of restraint, saying that in making decisions under this part, a peace officer, justice, or judge shall give primary consideration to the release of the accused at the earliest reasonable opportunity and on the least onerous conditions that are appropriate in the circumstances. This is because of the presumption of innocence. So you don't want to be pre-punishing innocent people by holding them in jail waiting for their trial. So generally, the preference is to release people pending trial, if that can be done safely, to ensure that you're not giving people their jail sentence up front before they've actually been found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But then here's the key section, 493.2. In making a decision under this part, a peace officer, justice, or judge shall give particular attention to the circumstances of A. Aboriginal accused, and B. Accused who belong to a vulnerable population that is overrepresented in the criminal justice system and that is disadvantaged in obtaining release under this part. So just to translate that into plain English, I think we all know what that means. Everyone other than white people essentially get easier bail because a special consideration for restraint has to be given to non-white people. So this is, in effect, in my view, race-based preference. Depending on what race you are, you get treated differently by the bail courts. And that is exactly what appears to have happened in the case of Mr. McKenzie, who had a terrible prior record for violence, and he is out on bail for assaulting a police officer when this shooting occurs. So I think this comes back to one of those problems I've talked about many times, where the law is not an instrument that can deal with deeper societal problems. So they're trying to use the bail laws to deal with the situation where there's proportionally more Indigenous and people of color in jails than there are white people. But instead of looking at deeper questions like why are these people in jail, it's just assumed that it's because of racism. I mean, it's certainly acknowledged to an extent that they have difficult upbringings. There's a variety of factors, poverty, things of that nature. But instead of addressing the poverty or addressing the fact that there's no clean drinking water on many reserves, well, we'll just let them out on bail more to reduce the numbers of them in jail. I mean, this is the very definition of a band-aid solution to a surgery problem. But it's also a lot easier to do than the things that I'm talking about, to trying to get to the root cause, trying to uplift people and make their lives better so that they're less likely to get involved in crime. So I think people should be aware of that. I mean, when the OPP union is clamoring for change, is this what they'll be asking to be changed? Or are we going to have a situation where they just make bail harder for everyone to get across the board, but there's still a race-based discount if you're not a white person? Which I don't think is going to solve anything. Time will tell. In any event, this video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, call a lawyer. You can call another lawyer or myself. My website and phone number are listed below. If there's topics you'd like to see me cover on the show, please send an email to the email address listed below or leave a comment in the comment section. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.